Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about React hooks interview question. Yes, I do have a series on React interview question. It's a 4-part series. I'll provide a link in the end. That is where I focus on React. And this particular video, I am solely focusing on React hooks specific interview questions. React hooks are here to stay, and a lot of projects are using it. So if you go for an interview now, there's a high possibility that they may ask you questions regarding React hooks. So it's important that you know. And also, a lot of people think that they are working in a React project, and I think that they know the technology so they can answer any question. But that's not true. When you go for an interview, sometimes it's hard to answer specific question because you have to kind of explain things. And if you're not prepared, you're not going to be answered even though you know the technology. So I would highly recommend watching this video until end. And one advice I give it to you, never give bookish answer or read definitions that is provided. Always explain in your way. Be confident and be cool when you go for an interview. And welcome to Techsy Tutorials. Before we continue, I would like to give a big shout out to our sponsor for this video called Dashlane. Dashlane is a mobile and desktop app that lets you store all your personal data like password, credit card, and other personal information in one single place. So you don't have to look for them anytime you need to fill a form or log into an account. And you can do all of these securely. And I'm using Dashlane. I'm loving it because I get one-click autofill experience, and now I don't have to look for information when I really need it. It's a digital wallet, a password manager rolled into one. Dashlane also monitor all your account for breaches, meaning it tells you if one of them gets hacked, which is very important nowadays. Here's how you get Dashlane. You can download a free version for a single device for lifetime, which is free. Or you can get a premium version. You can download it for unlimited devices. And if you use my link on the description, you can get for 30 days free trial for a premium version. No credit card required at checkout. And by using my link, you'll be supporting my channel. So check it out and let me know how you enjoy using Dashlane. So let's get our first question right. What is React hooks? If you do something, then you need to know what you're doing. So an interviewer wants to know, do you know React hooks? Here's a textbook answer. Hooks are functions that let you hook into React state and lifecycle features from function components. So there are 4 keywords: hooks, state, lifecycle feature, and functional components. Now, you can assemble your own answer based on that. Don't give this particular answer. But even if you do that, you have to explain a little bit, right? So you would say something like this: prior to introduction of hooks, React was using class components, which means object-oriented programming. So there was classes, and there was class methods, which are lifecycle methods, and there was a class property called state. Now you're replacing classes with functions, so you need some way to actually provide state and lifecycle features. So for state, you need to persist something, right? So if you have a functional programming, you can use closure to persist, and then you use hooks, which allows you to create those lifecycle. And it's not completely one-to-one mapping of lifecycle methods. The following question would provide the answer to the lifecycle method. So I'm going to separate that. The next question is, why React hooks? Which is pretty simple. I would say it's a different way of doing the same thing, right? You used to use classes, now you're using functions. No more complex lifecycle methods, right? If you're doing something new way, there has to be some advantage. All those methods that are very hard to remember and they keep changing, you don't have to do it anymore. There are like 2 hooks that let you do all of that. It's much simpler code because when you use Redux with your React, remember you have to, for every single component, you have to do map state to props and map dispatch to prop, which was pretty annoying. And you don't have to do that because there are no classes. So instead, you can use hooks like useSelector and useDispatch. And so this way, hooking into components is much easier. The next question is, tell me the rules of React hooks. There are some rules you have to follow. So the first rule is only call hooks at the top level. Don't call hooks inside loops, condition, nested function. And again, you have to memorize all this stuff. Call hooks from React component or custom hooks. Don't call it from regular functions. Okay, and this is the most important one, lifecycle methods, right? Now, since there are no classes, how do you achieve the same thing? So there are hooks for that. For every single class method, how are you gonna do with hooks? So first, I would say stages of lifecycle. You don't start explaining that, okay, this is this lifecycle method and this is the hooks. You would say something like, okay, there are 3 phases of lifecycle. In the initial render, updates, and unmount. Let's look at each stage. So the first stage, initial render, there are 2 lifecycle methods. So the first one, get derivative state from props. You can use effect. This is where you write your logic, but you can provide props here as an argument. Props, and then you can do something with it, right? Because you have props here. The good thing about hooks is you can have multiple use effects. This is a huge advantage over this because here's only one method. Actually separate for each prop, you can have a separate use effect. Component did mount, which means after the component is mounted, if you provide an empty array, this is not one-to-one mapping. This also runs every time, first time and every time, which means initial render and also update. But component did mount in classes only runs first time. When you do the update, there are more than 2 methods. The first one we already covered is the same way. The second one is should component update. So you can use memo to do that. Basically, you can decide if I want to render this component or not. Component did update. So the difference between if you look at the component did mount and did update is this last parameter. Again, this runs both initial render and updates. This runs or only updates, doesn't run on an initial render. And the last one is called get snapshot before update. This is rarely used. So the example would be, let's say you have an infinite scroll, right? As soon as you scroll at the bottom, it gets more data and it appends to the list. So now what you want to do is you want to remember the scroll position. So when the list is appended, you can go back to the previous position. That's why this method was needed. You need to take a snapshot of what was there before so you can use that. Now with the hooks, you can create a custom hook set that allows you to hold previous state. So there is no like a built-in functionality for this, but because this is very rarely used. And when you unmount, so this is the last stage. When you unmount, it's again use effect. It's the same hook is used everywhere, except the way it's used is different. So when you unmount, instead of just simply executing a function, there is a return statement. And return, you basically return a function, and inside that function, you do the cleanup job. 2 more methods that a lot of people don't even know about. Something called error boundaries. So get derivative state from error and componentDidCatch. With hooks, these methods are not available. There are other ways to do it, but there's no plan for doing something like this at the moment. Next question. This is pretty common because let's say if the company that you're interviewing with, they have already a product which is using React older version, and now they're in the middle of upgrading, migrating to hooks project. They may ask you the same question because they have gone through the exercise. They want to know if you know or how to do it. And I want to create a whole new video for this, but I'm just going to quickly go through it. And there are 2 main libraries, React and React DOM. So you have to upgrade that in package.json. You need to figure out which version you're going to use and then upgrade it and run npm install. You test your code, basically run the automation test if you have, or just manual test to make sure everything works. Then you have to plan to upgrade the code. You have to do one route at a time, one component at a time, because the good thing about React upgrades, you can have in the hooks project, you can also have class components in a separate route as well, right? So we have one route, which is a class component, and a second route, which is a functional component. It's fine. So take each route and then convert into a functional component, and then you figure out how to do it so that you can apply the same method everywhere. For that, you may have to do, this dot state to use state. It's not simple like just replacing it, because you have to do a little bit more, because your state might be like a one giant object. With use state, you can have multiple use states, right? Same thing with the lifecycle events. Remember, I showed you how to do it. You need to understand how you're using your lifecycle methods, and you replace with the appropriate lifecycle method, like a use effect, use memo, and whatnot. And again, test. This kind of covers the basics. There are a lot of other things like how to upgrade Redux, routing, and all that stuff, right? So which I'm not covering, but just mention it, right? You don't have to explain every single detail in an interview, because that will be just too much. How to debug React hooks. They usually want to know, interviewer wants to know, how do you usually debug a project? I would cover all the cases, because usually in interviewer's mind, there's some specific thing that's stuck, right? And if you give all the answers, then they may be happy, because one of them would match. Console log is quite famous. Debugger statements. I use React Developer Tool, which is a Chrome plugin. There is a new hook called debug value. Obviously, the good old inspector. There are tons of stuff in the inspector that you can use to debug. Now let's look at coding exercise. Most of the React interviews would cover a lot of oral questions where they will ask you the question I asked, right? You either have to build something, so like build a project from scratch, or they give you a project and you have to update something, add a new feature. Or a third way of doing it is there may be some bugs in the project they gave you, and then you have to find the bugs. That's all, folks. I hope you learned something from this video. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and provide a nice comment. And you can follow me on Facebook groups. You can also buy the Udemy course that I have on React hooks and JavaScript. It's a comprehensive course. And you can also check out my blog and website. You can translate this video for me. The description holds the information. And you can be my Patreon for a lot of other perks. And thank you.